Warning: this episode contains graphic descriptions of the sexual abuse of children. Viewer discretion is advised. When Charlene Lunnon and Lisa Hoodless walked to school on a cold January morning, they saw a turquoise car pass multiple times but shrugged it off. When the car pulled up ahead of them, a man got out and opened the trunk. Thinking he lived there and was just retrieving something from the trunk, they continued on their way, not knowing that, when they came into contact with him, it would be the beginning of 3 days with a child predator. This is Monsters. Charlene Lunnon hadn't had the easiest life by the time she was 10 years old. Born prematurely in 1988 to a mother who drank and shot heroin while she was pregnant, Charlene stayed in the hospital for 2 months before being released. Her mother, Sandra, had 4 other children who had a different father, but they were in their 20s by the time Charlene was born. She grew up in a filthy home where her mother had a revolving door of men over to shoot drugs and have sex, not seeming to care that there was a child around. Sandra also didn't seem interested in making sure her daughter was fed properly, and eventually Charlene got so thin, social services stepped in and put her in foster care. Between the ages of 4 and 6, she moved around foster homes and was sent back to live with her mother for a brief period. Then her aunt and uncle agreed to foster her, and her situation improved quite a bit. She was well taken care of and did all right in school despite being diagnosed with dyslexia. That aunt was the sister of Charlene's father, Keith Lunnon, who she had never known. Sandra told her that her father was a drug addict and was probably in jail, but that wasn't entirely true. Sure, Keith had been a drug addict and he had been in some trouble with the law, but he had since gotten himself clean and was interested in giving Charlene a stable home. He had gotten a job at the rehab center helping other people get clean. Keith was keen to get custody of Charlene, but Sandra also wanted to get her daughter back. Enough so that she finally got off drugs and stopped drinking. When Charlene was 8, Sandra was told she could regain custody of her daughter as long as she remained clean for a few more weeks. While that happened, Charlene continued having regular supervised visits with her mother. One day in February of 1997, Charlene showed up at the social services center for her visitation, but Sandra never showed up. 2 days later, she would learn that her mother had a fight with her fiancé and fell off the wagon. She shot up a dose of heroin, but she had been clean long enough to have lowered her tolerance and she died. At that point, her father got custody of her and she went to live with him in Hastings, south of London on the coast of the English Channel. Lisa Hoodless was also born in 1988 in Hastings, the second of 4 children. She had a much more standard upbringing than Charlene, with her parents remaining together and even having her grandfather live in an apartment on the first floor of their house. Her father was a gardener for the city and her mother stayed home with the children. Lisa was a good student and won a story writing competition in primary school. When Charlene moved to the area and started attending Christ Church Primary, the first student she talked to was Lisa. They discovered that they lived near each other and quickly became best friends. That school year was near the end and the girls spent the summer playing at each other's houses, though it was more often at Charlene's house. Charlene's stepmother, Philomena, wasn't the biggest fan of the new addition, and her stepsister, Carrie Jane, bullied her, but her father gave her anything she wanted. Lisa later said that if they ignored Philomena and Carrie Jane, they could do pretty much whatever they wanted. By the time the new school year started, the girls had both turned 10 and they were allowed to walk to school on their own. Philomena would walk with Charlene to Lisa's house, then the girls would make the 10-minute walk to school together. After the Christmas break, the girls returned to school with their regular routine of meeting at Lisa's house and walking from there. But on January 19, 1999, Philomena was busy with something else and couldn't walk with Charlene to her friend's house. Charlene was running late, so she called Lisa and asked her to meet up down the road. After putting on her thick winter coat, she headed out and quickly found Lisa a few blocks away. As soon as they were together, a car passed by and Lisa claimed she thought it was following her. Charlene said she thought Lisa was just being dramatic. On the way, they stopped at a shop to purchase some candy, and after that, they were playing around and Lisa stepped into the road as a car was approaching. The driver hit the brakes and swerved and nobody was injured, but up the road a ways, he came to a complete stop and got out of the turquoise vehicle. It was the same car Lisa had seen earlier. He walked around the back of the car and opened the trunk, which the girls assumed was because he lived there. As they passed the man, he apologized to Lisa for almost hitting her, saying it wasn't her fault. She said it was okay and the girls tried to walk away, but he put his arms around them and said, quote, "Get in the car and do as I say." Lisa started to scream, but the man put his hand over her mouth. Charlene said she was frozen as he picked up her friend and threw her into the trunk of the car. She would later say that he only had a hold of her coat and she could have gotten free, but she didn't want to abandon Lisa. When the man ordered her into the trunk, she climbed in. She asked him what he was going to do with them, and he answered that he wanted them for money. They drove for a while until they could hear their tires on a gravel road. Eventually, the car stopped and the man opened the trunk. He pulled out Charlene and said he was going to talk to her first, then closed the trunk with Lisa still inside. He got into the backseat of the car and pulled Charlene up onto his lap. Then he asked her questions, her name, her age, her favorite color, and her favorite food. He told Charlene that he wasn't going to hurt them, he just wanted to ransom them for money. Then he took out a notebook and asked Charlene for her father's name, address, and phone number. After that, he put Charlene back in the trunk with Lisa. Soon they could hear the tires roll along the gravel road again. Eventually they felt the car stop and they could hear the sound of doors closing. When the trunk opened again, it was dark, not because it was night, but because they were in an enclosed space. As her eyes adjusted, Lisa realized that they were in a garage. The man pulled her out of the trunk and told her to get into a large duffel bag. She protested, but he shoved her inside and zipped the bag up. He closed the trunk with Charlene still inside and picked up the bag. Lisa said she was worried she might suffocate, but it was only a few steps from the garage to the house and she was let out of the bag. Inside the house, the man sat on the sofa and pulled Lisa in front of him. He also pulled her onto his lap, but this time before he did, he stripped off Lisa's clothes. As she sat on his lap naked, he asked for her name and address, which he jotted down in his notebook. Then other questions followed, favorite food and what movies she liked. Then he began touching her between her legs while asking her questions. She told him to stop, but he wouldn't. When the man was done, he told Lisa not to move and left the room. Back in the garage, the man opened the trunk and ordered Charlene out. Then he told her to take off her pants and underwear. He opened the door to the back seat of the car and had her climb inside. He told her to sit with her back against the other door and spread her legs. Then he just stared at her for who knows how long. When he was done, he told her to put her clothes back on and put her back in the trunk. After a while, the man came back into the garage with Lisa and the duffel bag and opened the trunk. He transferred the girl from the bag to the trunk and then drove the car back out of the garage. The next time the trunk was opened, they were in a parking garage and the man used the duffel bag to take both girls up to the apartment one at a time. He had the girls sit on the sofa and watch television. He had brought their backpacks in and let them eat their lunches. That evening, he tied Lisa up with women's stockings and told her to be quiet, leaving her on the sofa. Then he brought Charlene into the bedroom and took off her clothes. He told her she was a little bigger, so what was about to happen would be easier. Then he spent about an hour attempting to force himself inside her. Though he didn't seem to succeed, it caused tremendous pain for Charlene, and Lisa could hear her screaming and crying. He eventually brought Charlene back into the living room and told them both to go to sleep on the couch. The following morning, they awoke to the man sitting down by them saying he had made a mistake. He said, quote, "I'm sorry, I've got myself into a big mess and I don't really know how to get out of it. I should have never taken you." Then he introduced himself as Alan. Alan Hopkinson was born in June of 1953 in Eastbourne, just west down the coast from Hastings. His father worked for British Rail and they were an upper-middle-class family. When Alan was 4 years old, the family moved to Rhodesia, now called Zimbabwe, where he was described as a very good student. At 21, he spent 2 years in the Rhodesian Air Force before moving back to London, where he lived with family. He worked manual labor jobs until 1981 when he took a computer programming course. When his parents moved back to England, he started living with them, where he became known by the neighbors as the pervert. He fantasized about sex with children and kept a journal he titled The Evil Rapist. In July of 1990, he tried to kidnap an 18-year-old French hitchhiker, but she managed to escape. Then in November, he did kidnap an 11-year-old girl as she was walking home from school. He threw her in the trunk of his car, drove to the woods, and sexually assaulted her. After that, he brought the girl back to his parents' house and forced her into a small cupboard. When the girl was reported missing, officers interviewed her classmates, and one of them had seen Alan's car. That same day, authorities arrived at his parents' house where they discovered the girl. Alan was only charged with kidnapping, and he was sentenced to 7 years in prison. When he was released after 4 years, he was only required to serve 6 months of probation since his charges didn't involve any sex offenses. It was later revealed that, while in prison, he had secretly created a map of the schools in the area and listed names of children he had read about in the newspaper. Once out of prison, Alan moved into a small apartment over a shopping center, and there he started luring children to his place. Neighbors started noticing a number of young children coming to his apartment at all hours because he would give them candy and let them bake cookies. The neighbors eventually made a complaint to the police, and they told him he needed to stay away from the children, but he didn't. In the late 90s, the authorities started gathering evidence against him to get a court order barring him from being around children, but they were still conducting their investigation when January 19, 1999 came around. Alan explained that the house he had brought the girls to the day before belonged to his parents. They had gone out of town and gave him a place to bring back a girl that he kidnapped. He said he couldn't stop thinking about being with a young girl. It's not clear why he needed his parents' house, since he clearly had no problem using his own apartment for sexual assault, but you can't reason with the unreasonable. After telling the girls who he was, he said he was going to release them and that he wanted to get caught. He thought that being in prison would be an easier life than he was living on the outside. Charlene said that if he promised to not harm them anymore, they would tell the police that he was nice to them, and he agreed. He said he would not sexually assault either of them again. Then he said he had called both of their parents, and they both refused to pay a ransom. Neither Charlene or Lisa could believe that and knew their parents would have done whatever it took to get them back. So they remained confused as they sat in the living room while Alan said he was going to figure this out. They sat there for hours while Alan was shuffling around in a second bedroom that had a computer and a bunch of papers. Eventually, Alan walked up to the girl sitting on the couch and told Lisa she was too small, so he was going to take Charlene in the bedroom again. Charlene reminded him that he had promised not to sexually assault her again, but he didn't care. When he wasn't able to complete the rape a second time, he went into the living room and brought back Lisa. After spending some time staring at the two naked 10-year-olds on his bed, he moved Charlene back to the living room and shut himself in the bedroom with Lisa. Lisa was too young to understand fully what sex was, but eventually Alan stopped his assault and she felt something sticky on her stomach. Then he put her back in the living room and went to take a bath. While Lisa was in the bedroom, Charlene had seen a news report about them on the television, and she informed Lisa that the police were looking for them. When he was finished bathing and dressing, he came into the living room and told the girls again that he was going to let them go. This time he said he wanted to wait until it was dark, so he offered to let them play games on his computer until then. Back in the living room, the girls were excited by the prospect of going home and talked about what they wanted to do when they got there. Later, Alan made them take baths and then had them put their school uniforms back on. During the evening news, Charlene and Lisa's parents were on, begging for their daughter to come home. Charlene said it was clear that they had no idea they were kidnapped. She asked Alan, quote, "You haven't phoned them, have you?" Alan responded that it didn't matter now that he was taking them home. He took Lisa down in the duffel bag, but to get Charlene from the apartment to the car, he put a big plastic bag over her that had holes cut out for her mouth and eyes. He had her run down the stairs to the parking garage where she got into the trunk with Lisa. They drove away from the apartment but stopped shortly after. In the trunk, the girls knew it took longer to get to Hastings. When Alan opened the trunk, he had them get into the back seat and then told them he was going to get them food. He walked to a nearby fish and chip shop, leaving the girls in the back seat. Before he left, he told them that it was a really bad part of town, and if they left the car, they would likely get kidnapped by someone even worse than him, since he treated them so well so far. They thought about fleeing the car, but they still believed he was going to take them home and they didn't want to get snatched by someone else. He returned with food, which the girls didn't eat much of, then he continued driving, allowing the girls to stay in the back seat. When they started going away from Hastings, Charlene tried to correct Alan, but he played it off as if he were lost. When both Charlene and Lisa began claiming they needed to urinate, Alan finally pulled over in a secluded area near the coast. It was dark, there was no one around, and the girls had no idea where they could go. Eventually, Alan told them that he changed his mind and was going to keep them one more day. Then he put them back in the trunk and the car drove away. After a short drive, Alan opened the trunk and the girls could see that they were back in the garage at his parents' house. They went through the process of being brought into the house one at a time. Lisa was first and she was put on the couch in the living room. Then Charlene was brought in and walked back into a bedroom. When Lisa heard Charlene scream, she barged down the hall and opened the bedroom door. There, Charlene was on her hands and knees and Alan was attempting to sexually assault her from behind. Lisa started yelling at him to stop. She said he promised not to rape them anymore and he broke his promise. Alan told Lisa to be quiet or else she would wake the neighbors, and he told her that they were really bad people that would do awful things to them. Lisa responded, quote, "You're a bad person and you're doing awful things to us." People like Alan tell their victims that the people around them are bad people, so they'll be too afraid to seek their help. But at some point, those victims realize that the bad person is them. Alan just stood up and said, quote, "Okay, let's go then." He returned them to his apartment and told them to go to sleep. He had to pick his parents up from the airport, and he told them again that they shouldn't try to escape because his neighbor was a really bad man. Wow, it seems like this guy only lives by horrible people. The following morning, the girls woke up alone in the apartment. When they realized that Alan wasn't there, they searched for anything that could help them escape, but they came up empty-handed. When Alan finally came in, he turned on the news to see how the search for his captives was going. Again, Charlene's father appeared on television, but this time he asked anyone who might be holding the girls to please let them go. The plea did nothing to encourage Alan to release his victims. He spent that Thursday bringing the girls back into the bedroom in turns. Charlene, then Lisa, then Charlene, then Lisa. Charlene described just retreating into her own mind and feeling completely numb. There was a break when Alan went out and got some food, and then the sexual assaults continued. For the girls, who continually wondered if Alan was going to kill them, him feeding them was a good sign. Why would he do that if he was just going to kill them? The girls decided to pretend to be sleeping, and they thought that did the trick. The next time he came into the living room, he turned the television off and left them alone. It wasn't long, though, before he woke Lisa up and brought her back to the bedroom. Then he did the same to Charlene, and that went on all night long. In the early morning hours of the next day, Lisa pretended to not be able to wake up when he shook her, so he just picked her up and carried her into the bedroom. It seems that Alan couldn't focus on anything but attaining his ultimate goal. He had started following Lisa the morning of January 19th because he wanted to rape her. He had managed to penetrate Charlene, but Lisa was still too small. After carrying her into the bedroom, he spent over 3 hours with her, in that time finally forcing his way inside of her. She would describe it as feeling like she was being ripped in half. When Alan was finished, it was a little after 9 a.m. on January 22nd. He let Lisa go back into the living room, but shortly after there was a loud bang on the front door. Alan came out of the bedroom, but he didn't answer the door. The banging happened again, and then someone shouted, "Police!" Alan told the girls to be quiet as he continued pacing back and forth, muttering under his breath. The police had to pound 2 more times before Alan finally opened the door. The police were not there because they thought he had something to do with Charlene and Lisa's disappearance. They wanted to question him about their ongoing investigation into his involvement with other young girls. They asked him to come down to the station for questioning, and Alan agreed, asking if he could grab his wallet. They said yes, and the girls watched as Alan walked past them to the bedroom, where he retrieved his wallet, then walked back toward the door and casually said, quote, "Oh, by the way, I've got the 2 missing girls from Hastings in the front room." When one of the officers walked into the living room and saw the girls, he was shocked. They called for backup, and from there, the apartment became a beehive of activity. Lisa and Charlene were taken to separate police stations so they could be examined and interviewed at the same time. First, they were examined to document their injuries. Charlene described it like a hospital room, and she was there with a nurse and a doctor, both women. Lisa was seen in a private room, also by a female doctor. They did the best they could to be gentle while they collected the evidence that would put their attacker away. Then, after putting on some clothes that had been provided by their parents, they were questioned about their time in captivity. Then they were reunited with their families. When Charlene hugged her father, she told him that she hadn't run away, and he told her that he knew. When Lisa saw her family, she said it was the first time she'd ever seen her father cry. Both girls had police liaisons who stayed with the families for a few weeks and made sure the girls were protected. The publicity would put a spotlight on them, and they wanted to make sure they didn't attract the attention of any other nefarious characters. They also ensured the media didn't get too aggressive when they were out and about. After 2 weeks, the girls returned to school and became very popular with other students who wanted to hear every gory detail. Neither Charlene nor Lisa were interested in giving them up, though. They had told the police what had happened, and after that, they didn't want to think about it. Alan Hopkins ended up pleading guilty to 2 kidnappings and 9 assaults, and the judge sentenced him to 9 life sentences. He also admitted to 11 counts of indecent assault on 2 other girls aged 10 and 11 in 1998. He was up for parole multiple times, with the most recent in 2024, but has been continually denied. The court stated that they still believe that he's a danger to society. Charlene and Lisa would do well for themselves considering the trauma they endured. Many would expect them to spiral into depression and drug use, but they didn't. They both went on to become mothers and have done the best they can to raise their children in a loving environment. Despite having gone through more suffering than any 10-year-old should ever know, they went on to become positive influences on the world. If only we could say the same thing about the monster Alan Hopkinson. If you want to know more about this story, you can read Abducted, Taken, Tortured, Terrified by Charlene Lunnon and Lisa Hoodless. Thanks for watching This Is Monsters. New episodes are uploaded twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays. There are occasional bonus episodes covering unsolved cases and criminal history. If you have a suggestion for a case you think I should cover, leave it in the comments. You can always follow the channel on Instagram at thisis_monsters and purchase merch at thisismonsters.com. Thanks so much, and be safe.